Hello, my name is Stephen Duggan. I'm Vice President of Terawe. We're a technology services and solutions company. We're based in, our corporate headquarters is based in Washington State, actually close to the Microsoft headquarters. And then our EMEA Centre is based in Dublin in Ireland, which is where I'm speaking to you from today. We also have offices in Vancouver, in Toronto, in Marseille in France, in London, UK, in Bangalore in India, and also in Doha in Qatar, and also in Sydney in Australia. So you probably won't have heard of us, but we do a lot of work in technology, particularly around AI. So working with everyone from technology companies like Microsoft and Google to government and multinational organizations such as the European Commission, Ministries of Education, large healthcare and medical enterprises as well. And in education alone, for example, we work with all of the people you see listed here. I'm sure a lot of those logos will be familiar to you. Universities like Yale, Cambridge University, also a customer of ours. And we pride ourselves on having not just a background in technology, but also in education. I'm a former teacher. I spent 12 years in the classroom, and most of what I'm going to be talking about today will be focused very much on educators, how teachers can make use of AI in effective ways to help with teaching and learning. I know that for many, there's the discussion still centers around how kids are using AI, perhaps with fears of things like plagiarism. But what I'm going to try and do is show you some ways in which AI can actually help you as educators to actually advance learning. My background, as I said, was in teaching. I then joined Microsoft. I spent many years there. The last few years, I was Director of Worldwide Education Strategy for Microsoft. And I also got to spend 2 full terms as a member of the governing board of the UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies and Education. And while doing that, I got to write the very first policy brief on AI in education back in 2020. So you can imagine how out of date that is now. But very much that was an attempt to look at how AI could be used effectively to advance teaching and learning. And that policy brief was distributed to all the ministers of education in the 194 member states. So very quickly, how do a company like us use AI? Well, we use AI in a variety of different ways. One of the examples we're using AI is actually to help advance healthcare. So we did a project with Yale School of Medicine using AI to try and improve outcomes for organ transplantation. More than half of all organs donated are never used, and they were looking at ways in which they could improve that, and by extension, provide more care and better outcomes for more people. In fact, we'd done work of that nature with AI 7 years ago, working with Allscripts in the US, doing analysis of cervical cancer screenings to try and identify earlier markers to improve diagnoses, because until that time, literally, doctors were holding images up to the light or looking at screens and using their expertise, but with human fallibility to try and identify those signs. We've used AI in healthcare in some other interesting ways, and also in education in helping train doctors. So this is something we did with the Royal College of Surgeons, where we were actually using AI to analyze exchanges between patients and doctors, looking at everything from the intonation of their voice, the emotion, using emotion recognition and sentiment analysis to look at their expression, to help them build soft skills, things like establishing trust and empathy. We looked at their posture. We extracted the language they used and looked at that as well, and were able to give them personalized learning pathways. We've used AI in other interesting ways. This, for example, was a project we did with the Ministry of Education in Qatar, using predictive analytics to try and identify kids who might be in danger of dropping out of school. And, this was the Minister for Education's dashboard. She could come in each morning and see the best and worst performing schools, right down to a school level. A principal can actually look, and that green 87.6% you see there is AI not giving you a snapshot of the present, but actually giving you a view of the future. It's saying for this principle that at this moment, based on the data that's being used to train the AI, 87.6% of your students currently in school are likely to be in school next year. And what AI is doing there is allowing you to identify which students are most in need of help, and to do early interventions. It also allows the principal, for example, to see whether there are anomalies based on gender or age or socioeconomic background and things of that nature. And that AI goes right down to an individual student level. So there's an example of AI actually being used for good, to help identify students who might be in need of assistance due to things like depression or other things of that nature, and actually helping to predict outcomes and change outcomes. We've done something similar in the area of law enforcement, where we've been working with New Jersey State Police, working on what are called cold cases, unsolved cases for missing children. And in fact, this ended up meaning that we were covered in a number of the US news networks, because we were the first company to work with the police in this way, particularly around a case of a missing boy who went missing back in 1991. And we've used AI there to help try and better analyze vast amounts of data to help detectives ask questions and hopefully to solve cases. At the moment, we're now working on 8 different cold cases at any one time with New Jersey State Police, and we work with a variety of other police forces as well. We also took some of that AI and applied it, the AI I showed you in training doctors, applying it to help train police officers, looking at things like their ability to de-escalate conflict or to build trust with members of the public. And again, in each instance, what happens is the individual officer gets an individualized learning pathway. So that's a quick sort of skate through of the different ways in which we've been using AI as a company. How about how you can use AI as an educator? Because all of those same technologies can be used to some extent in terms of what you're doing. Similarly to the way I've shown you how we've been using AI to help train doctors and to train police officers, that same AI can be used to help teachers develop communication skills. And we're working with people like the University of Florida in the US, helping to use AI to assess teacher competencies and to help them build skills in a very personalized way. But let's rewind a little and go back to some of the fundamentals, because one of the things we find regularly is people have some confusion between things like LLMs and machine learning and AI and GenAI. And, it's probably, again, this might be second nature to many of you, but just to spend a minute or two on explaining that, let's start with LLMs. So large language models are basically just algorithms which have been developed and trained over enormous amounts of data, millions and millions and millions of pages of text or documents. And over time, that has allowed those algorithms to become very accurate in terms of predicting what might follow next or predicting what a user might want to find out. So all of those things you see like Copilot or ChatGPT or Gemini or Meta AI are all doing much the same with LLMs. They've trained the AI to analyze vast amounts of information so that it can provide you with accurate answers when you ask a question. When we get to generative AI, it changes, because what's happening with generative AI is the AI itself is now able to create things that didn't before exist, but only based on human prompts. So it's not ready to take over the world yet. We'll all be glad to hear. But what it does allow us to do is to say, can you create something like this based on the following information? And to give you an example of ways in which that's being used, we've already seen GenAI being used very effectively to create images. Now, GenAI is also capable of doing that with video. So in this instance, somebody has put in a prompt saying that they want a video of a stylish woman walking down a street in Tokyo, wearing a particular style of clothes, looking confident, and describes the weather and things of that nature. And based on that prompt, the AI is able to create a video. So bear in mind that nothing you're seeing there actually exists. The street doesn't exist, the people, including the person in the foreground, doesn't exist. Everything has been created by generative AI, but based on the prompt, based on the instructions, effectively, that a human has given them of what to create. And we're going to see that happening not only in areas like advertising, but increasingly in the creative medium as well. So, for example, this is a movie trailer. And again, what's happened is that a user has entered a prompt and says they want a movie trailer They want the central character to be a 30-year-old spaceman, but unusually dressed in a red woolen knitted motorcycle helmet and set in a particular background, filmed in a particular way. So it says here, shot in 35mm film with vivid colors. And again, based simply on that prompt, it's able to produce what you see in front of you. You know, if you notice all of the what look like very creative aspects, aspect ratios, panning and other devices, and the tangibility of everything you see on screen, the tarnish on the pewter on the helmet, the symbols of that the things that he's looking at and the backgrounds, all created by AI, but as I said, all created by prompts. And it's the prompts themselves that, if you like, are the secret sauce. And if you remember nothing else from this short presentation, just listen for the next few minutes, because AI is a tool that you can all use. But one of the skills you need to develop is how to write a good prompt. And let me give you an example. So here is a prompt that a science teacher might use, wanting to get some assistance in teaching photosynthesis to a class, particularly kids who are preparing for exams. So the prompt you see there in front of you is exactly that. It's simply a prompt instructing the AI to create some way of helping to explain photosynthesis. But actually, it's more structured than that, because there are 5 core elements to a good prompt. The first you see here is to have a persona, to tell whichever AI you're using, act as a helpful tutor. So it's giving it a role or a persona. Secondly, explaining what the core objective should be. This is about explaining the process of photosynthesis. So persona, then objective. And then thirdly, audience, that this must work for a 14-year-old student, specific age group, a particular type of person. And that affects obviously the kind of language that will be used. And then the context. Well, it's not simply to explain it, but it's to explain it to help them prepare for an exam. And finally, after context, boundaries. You tell the AI how long you want this to be and the tone or the language that is wanted to be used. If you can master those 5 elements, so that you're always giving the AI clear instruction, you're always providing context, and you're allowing the AI then to iterate and experiment, so you keep altering the prompt if you need to, you are then in a situation, just as you saw before, to create really valuable and really useful resources. In fact, there's kind of 6 core things, again, worth remembering that you can use AI for. One is what you've just seen before, being able to create age-appropriate and level-appropriate content. You can actually, for example, say, well, I want a detailed lesson plan, but maybe I want a lesson plan that suits a kinesthetic learner or a visual learner or an auditory learner. And you can actually set that to provide those additional contexts and make it even more specific and personalized. You can also use AI on the flip side, not just to create content, but to help assess and give feedback on students' own work. Because again, you can tell the AI to analyze and provide feedback on assignments or exams, but having explained the context for the specific student or group of students, so that the feedback is actually appropriate to them as an individual. You can also use it to do things like design quiz and tests, and I know a lot of teachers are already doing that. And you can get AI at this stage to create pretty much any type of test, narrative or multiple choice. 2 other ways in which you can use AI are the following. One is you can use AI to build around student engagement. So tools like Copilot, for example, will suggest activities, not just provide you with resources, but actually suggest ways in which you can get kids to work together, students to work together, and different sort of collaborative learning environments. And finally, the bane of most teachers' life, as it used to be for me, writing school reports. All teachers are guilty of effectively using the same stock phrases every now and then, but actually AI can really help you build meaningful communication with parents by making them personalized to the parents, personalized to the students, drafting things like newsletters, providing progress reports, all of the things that really build that relationship with parents, but actually are very time consuming. The thing we should remember outside of this is, of course, that students are already using AI. You know, any teacher who thinks their students is not using AI already is deluded. They're using it every single day, and they'll always be ahead of you. But rather than viewing that as a threat, I think it's really important that we do two things. One is that we embrace AI ourselves as educators. And the second is that we give those students some guidance about how to use AI. So just as I showed you 6 ways in which educators can use AI, there are 7 good guides that you should all be able to give to your students. The first one is just to explain to them that the AI is just an assistant. Yes, it's fine for you to use AI in particular circumstances, but bear in mind it's just there to help you. It will follow your commands, but you have to do the work and you have to do the thinking. Secondly is to make sure that they understand that the AI is not perfect. It will always give an answer, even if that answer isn't available. In other words, it will do what's called hallucination. It will make up stuff if it can't find a fact to fill the gap. And so it's very important that students understand that they can't take what AI produces for them in a first instance at face value. It's really important that they fact check, which is the third piece of guidance, that they go to the citations that AI will provide. Copilot, for example, will not only give you an answer, but it'll then tell you where those answers came from. And it's important that they look at those sources and make sure that those sources are relevant and are reputable, so that they can trust the information that's being provided. It's important also that students understand about bias, that AI can have many types of bias built in: gender-based bias, geographic bias, other forms of bias. So again, they should be aware of this and be mindful of this to make sure that what they're being told by the AI or presented with by the AI is something that's truly equitable and trustworthy. Again, very important that we instruct our students not only to use AI effectively, but also to cite the use of AI and cite the sources where that information came from. So it's part of the learning process rather than something that's trying to circumvent the learning process. Second last thing, obviously very important, they should never share personal information. They need to protect their information when they're communicating with AI, not doing anything they wouldn't do online to a stranger, to protect that information really, really carefully. And then lastly, and very carefully, to be very mindful of their own well-being, to using AI in an effective way, just like using social media in an effective way, also means with an understanding of the potential dangers, particularly to mental health and well-being. So I've been long enough in this area, working in technology and education, to remember when teachers were complaining that if kids were allowed to use calculators, they would lose the ability to do long division. I can remember in the 1990s when I first joined Microsoft, when there was a serious debate going on about whether computers would replace teachers. And there was again resistance to that technology being used in schools and in classrooms. In fact, I remember Michael Fullan, the educational philosopher, being asked that question once at the World Economic Forum in London, when somebody said, "Mr. Fullan, do you think computers will replace teachers?" And his answer was, if a teacher can be replaced by a computer, then they should be. Of course, teachers are a lot more than dispensers of knowledge. In the similar way, we shouldn't fear this new technology. We should embrace it. It can do an awful lot for us as educators. And some of the things it's going to do is actually going to empower teachers in whole new ways. As a quick vision of the future before I conclude, I'm going to show you 3 short videos. In each case, these videos, these are avatars, were created by just analyzing 30 seconds of an existing educator. So 30 seconds recorded video and audio of a teacher allows you to create an avatar, which can then provide a class. Just feed the text into them, and then they will actually start to speak in the same voice and provide that same information in that effective way. So maybe the future for educators might include a staff room, something similar to what you're seeing here, where teachers are actually able to expand their reach and reach students in new and ever more effective ways. If you have any questions or there's anything you'd like to follow up on, I'm always happy to receive those correspondences. That's my email address you see on screen. And I hope you found this of some interest and maybe a little entertainment value as well. Many thanks all of you for your time.